You're listening to Dotwave, and I'm your host, John O'Wells. Thank you so much for tuning in this day of so many options of great music and podcasts out there. I do appreciate you choosing my show. This week, I'm honored to have Alberto Racanati in the studios with us. Alberto is a classically trained trumpet player, electronic musician, and also a music instructor. You're listening to his gorgeous music in the background right now during this intro, and his story is quite unique. If you like this show, please consider supporting us through Patreon. So I'd like to acknowledge my patrons right now. Mr. Daniel Nelmar, thank you so much for being part of this show. Mr. Chris Meyer of Learning Modular, thank you so much, man. Matthew Korsmo, Colin Williams, who also goes by Moduct, thank you so much, guys. Patrick O'Brien, who's already been on this show, thanks so much, Patrick. Mr. Todd Barton, thank you so much for joining my team. Todd and I did an interview a couple weeks ago, and he'll be on our show very shortly. And my dear sister, Travarsi, thank you so much, guys, for helping me do this. Patreon is a grassroots-style crowdfunding platform where you can give a monthly donation as little as $1 to artists like myself who are creating something which you really appreciate. I know that $1 might seem small, but it does add up. Creating a professional show like this takes a lot of time and work, and donating helps me do so. So if you'd like to support our show, please head over to patreon.com/dotwave. Thank you. Okay, on to this week's episode. I think we should get right to it. Okay, welcome to the show, Alberto Racanati. Man, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, this is really nice. So I found you on Instagram, and now here we are, from Instagram to reality.
And here we are. Thank you, Instagram algorithm, once more.
So you are located in Missouri.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're just magically in the same studio here. It's just amazing how it works out, see?
Yeah, you're in my music room.
No, you're in
cool.
my music room, man.
All right, we're in each other's music rooms. Okay, cool.
Okay, so where do you live? And tell us a little bit about what it is to make music in that city.
So Kansas City, I've talked to a number of people from California, who thinks that there is absolutely nothing going on in the Midwest, and especially in Kansas City. So, something like, what the hell are you doing down there? But it is actually a kind of a cathedral in the desert, the way I see it, because there's nothing around here. If you can drive 4 hours and not being in like a decently sized city. But the arts are really happening in Kansas City. There is just lots of stuff that allows art to express itself. There are lots of art galleries, a beautiful, beautiful museum. We have lots of clubs that really promote live music. There is a huge jazz scene because of, Charlie Parker and all those guys that have lived in Kansas City in the day. There's a great classical music scene. It's a pretty good city. I love living here mostly because I'm not necessarily the big metropolis dude. I'm more like, I come from a little town. So obviously being a musician full time, I do need to be in a place where things are happening and I get calls and all that. So this is the perfect size because I still get to live in a place where I know people's faces, and I go out at night, even if I don't know you, I will still see the same people. But at the same time, it's not like New York where you're just like a drop in the ocean. And I don't know. I always like this kind of vibe. And it's not really that small a place. So loving it so far. It's been 4 years in Kansas City.
I see. So you do have shows as a solo artist. You go out and play in clubs there?
Yes, this is still like a new thing for me. I have my solo act that I'm starting to push around a little bit. So I played in a bunch of house concerts. I played in a bunch of like shows in some local cafes and bars and stuff like that. I have another duo where I don't want to say we do the same stuff as ALBER sounds, but it's kind of like in the realm of like electronic music plus acoustic instruments, that sort of thing, even though it's a different vibe, definitely. I have a duo with this friend of mine, with which we played in a couple of. We're tapping into the contemporary music scene, so we played in a bunch of festivals where
Nice.
people will be making, I don't know, a modular set, and then we play our songs, or like I don't know, a percussionist rubbing a balloon in front of a microphone with a lot of reverb, this kind of stuff. So we're tapping a little bit into that. A couple of art gallery shows. Yeah, it could be more, but I can't complain for now.
Well, if you make it to San Diego, you've got to tell me so that we can, we can book a show.
I've never been to California. It's definitely in my list of places where I want to go to, and you better be prepared.
Oh, that's great.
Because I will.
So when you play solo, you book yourself as ALBER Sounds?
Yes, ALBER or ALBER Sounds, it depends. That's still something that, as I said, I'm still getting the hang of this thing. Because for me, this whole project is very much like a self-discovery journey, in a way, because I'm a full-time musician. I have a background in classical music. I have a bunch of degrees. I'm a music teacher. I teach on Skype, but also go to a bunch of schools, private schools, public schools. It's kind of a hustle, I work in 4 or 5 different places at once. So as I told you by the phone last time when we talked, I'm living the life, or at least I'm trying. So
that's great, man.
This thing that I'm doing here, pretty much, it's something that I decided to live on my own pace, and I set my own rules for it. I do it only if I want to, because I already make music, some different music, but I kind of already make music all the time. So this is something that I do. It's something that I'm figuring out really as I go.
Yeah. Isn't it just always like that, right? Like it's not laid out for us, but we've got to there's some level of kind of stumbling in the dark and figuring out who we are, what our story is.
Yeah, of course. When you're creative with music, that's part of the deal. Also, especially in what we are doing in terms of technology and all that. I mean, last week there have been like 5 new synthesizers coming out or something like that. The market is like exploding. There's new technologies just being developed constantly, and it's also something that brings me to be up to date with what's happening. Hey, have you checked out this latest synthesizer? Whoa, let me watch a video about it. So there's a lot of, it's pretty much actual, and it's constantly evolving, and I think that's kind of cool.
Speaking of gear, how bad is your gear acquisition syndrome? How bad is it?
My gas?
Yeah. Do you have bad gas?
That's a question that only a doctor could ask me, I thought.
Because Instagram is not helping me, man. I'm like scrolling stuff, and I'm watching people showing off their synths or what they just got, or there's a manufacturer ad, and it's really hard for me. I have a really bad time with it.
It is really hard for me too, I would say. In the past months, I've been somewhat of a more considerate person regarding these things. Meaning that right now, when I'm playing, I don't necessarily feel like I cannot really get this done if I don't have this other piece of equipment. So in terms of need, I don't feel like I desperately need something, but I want lots of things, if that makes sense.
Right. No,
like I don't need anything, but I need a lot of, I don't need anything, but I want a lot of things. I don't want to buy just another pedal that will end up not using.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What do you have your eyes on right now?
I'm debating between 2 things. I want something that will put out some decent bass. And I always like machines that can do more than one thing, or can open the rest of your gear into unexpected combinations. I'm looking at 2 things. One is the Behringer Neutron. which is recently just is on sale or something. It's like super cheap right now. And the other piece of equipment is the Arturia Microfreak. Yeah, that guy is also pretty juicy and interesting. And I just saw this video. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, this Red Beans recording. He's amazing. He put out this really funny song where he pretty much used only the Arturia Microfreak, and I think Tight Ship is the name of the song. It was just, it's a blast. So yeah, I'm looking at one of the two for now, but who knows?
My musical partner Matt Stewart has the Neutron, and we've used that in conjunction with our Eurorack system, and he really loves that synth. So how would you sequence that?
I am using the model samples. It's kind of like the main piece in my rig right now. And even though it doesn't have that many tracks, it has only 6. I'm really having a lot of fun sequencing external gear with the Electron sequencer. So for now, for example, I'm using I have a Volca FM, and I'm sequencing pretty much the Volca FM with the model samples. So I would do the same thing with the Neutron. I also have a Arturia key step.
Yeah, that's got a great sequencer and CV.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I would say the model samples pretty much. The only thing about the model sample sequencer is that a monophonic sequencer, right? But if I mean on the Neutron, it's paraphonic, but I think it has 2 voices max.
Yeah.
So I will be using pretty much in a standard setting. I will be using just 1 to play bass, and that's gonna work just fine with the model sample sequencer.
Does the model have CV out, or do you convert MIDI to CV?
It doesn't have CV out. It has only MIDI out, and it has those 1/8 jacks. It doesn't have the 5-pin, but the Neutron has a MIDI in. So that's what I would be planning on using.
And you don't have any Eurorack, right?
No. Okay. No. That I'm not. It didn't get that bad just yet.
Oh my God.
I feel like one day I might get into it, but I look at prices of all that stuff, and I'm like, there's no way I can afford like to buy a VCA for like $500. Like I can't.
It's scary, man. It's scary. I would say that if you're curious, although maybe I shouldn't recommend this because this is what got me down the rabbit hole, but if you're curious, I would download VCV Rack.
I already have it.
Okay.
I already use it. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, it's scary.
I know, and the thing is that I know that if I start buying a couple modules to start playing, then I would just keep buying them. So I'm not buying anything.
Good for you. I mean, the only way that I did, Eurorack was that I sold like everything I owned that wasn't tied down, which I wasn't making money with. So I do video for a living. So I sold just tons of gear so I could get my Eurorack, set up. And now it's a scary, terrifying rabbit hole.
Yeah. Do you have a big setup?
I don't. I have just over 6U, so 2 rows.
Okay.
But I had a friend build me a beautiful wooden case, which is 15U. Nice. So I can grow forever in that. So it's a very slippery slope, man. One way you could get into it without spending a ton of money is with Dupfer modules. I see. That's the oldest stuff. It's great. It's solid. It's simple. It's not like the new fancy, beautiful digital stuff that's coming out. But as far as real simple signal path and learning how to patch, Dupfer makes great stuff, and it's affordable. And also IntelliGel to an extent. They have some pretty fancy stuff too, but their stuff is real simple, good, great quality, great priced. By the way, I'm not sponsored by Dupfer or IntelliGel, just for the record. Okay, yeah, I could talk gear with you all day. Let's Same. Rewind a little bit.
Okay.
How did you come to Missouri? You said you've been there for 4 years. Can you tell me some of your history and training or life or childhood, and kind of tell me some of what really turned you on to make music?
So I was born and raised in a little town in southern Italy. Um, the nearby city is called Bari, Bari, as in Bari, Sax, and I lived there for the first 21 years of my life. And I started studying music since when I was probably around 10 or something like that in school. I don't really come from a musical background. My family is not really artistic or musical in any way, but somehow that just got me, and I started playing when I was a kid. So at first I started playing trumpet, and then back in the day I just really got heavily into metal music. So I might have been 14 years old or something like that when I bought my first electric bass, because I just wanted to play Metallica's songs and stuff like that with my best friends. So I always kept the trumpet studies as the more academic thing that I would do, and then that would be like, okay, I have a book, I have exercise I need to practice, and playing with my buddies would be like the after school sort of thing, in a way that I do that for fun. So soon I switched from bass guitar to drums, and I started playing drums. The band got somehow real. We started playing death metal. This was around when I was maybe 17, 18. I played in this band. We recorded a full length. The name of the band is Deadly Strain. We're still like on YouTube and some platforms, I think. We recorded a CD maybe in 2011 or something like that. So I was really deep into that game. I really loved the music. I listened to it all the time, and that for some reason I kept practicing classical music. And just like in a parallel line, let's say, I never really let those two words collide too much, also because classical trumpet and drums death metal, there's not a lot of they don't really touch base too much.
Right. It's like, hey guys, I've got an idea for the band. Everyone's like,
right,
Alberto,
not.
We've been talking about, we like you, man, but I don't think the trumpet thing's going to work out. So
trumpet solo and double bass drum roll, yeah. So what happened is that pretty much when I was something like 21, I was out of most school things. I had a couple of degrees in the conservatory already in my hometown. And so I decided I just wanted to go abroad to keep studying music more seriously, more professionally. So I kind of just left the band. Because you can't really make a career. You can't live out of death metal nowadays, sadly.
What did your friends and family think when you wanted to leave?
Well, there is this thing in the southern part of Italy. It's pretty much something that has been happening since ever, where the mentality is that if you really want to do something and you want to be respected in your field of work, whichever that field might be, you just gotta leave. So, especially when it comes to music, which is something that when things are not going too well for the economy, arts and music and all those arts in general will be the first things that will take the short end of the stick.
Of course, yeah.
Every time, right? So, family wasn't too hot about the idea of me trying to pursue a musical career. But hey, that's what I wanted to do. So I kind of just kept going forth, and I moved to Gdańsk, Poland. So I lived in Poland for 2 years as a music student. It was a great time. It was very cold.
Why did you choose Poland? How did that happen?
At first, it was because in Europe, if you go to any sort of university, it doesn't have to be music, like literally anything. There's this exchange program called the Erasmus program. It's something that comes out of like a European Union money. And pretty much they allow you to spend up to one solar year into a foreign institution, carrying around your course of studies. So I wanted to go to Germany because that's where it's happening for classical music. That's one of the most successful places where you can play classical music. Although everybody wants to go there because things are kind of still good there. And so my teacher was like, well, they filled up, so your second choice is... My second choice was Poland, just because it was in the list of places where I could go. I wasn't super happy about it, but then I arrived there and it was just great. So that was the first... I arrived there kind of like randomly. And I ended up staying for 2.5 years.
And your plan was to move out of Italy and bring your classical music with you. You weren't thinking about electronic music or anything like that.
No, that was not in the picture yet. I did flirt for maybe a year or two. I did flirt a little bit with the rave scene from my hometown, like let's say in my region, because there is a very active techno, dub scene, drum and bass. There's a lot of stuff like that happens, and especially back when those years in which I was going to those events, it was pretty hopping, and I just got really curious by the culture and the music. But there wasn't any music making in terms of electronic music yet. It was just something that I liked, and I liked the people hanging out there, and that was about it. Then, I just wanted to study at the highest possible level I could afford, to keep taking auditions and see what would happen to my career.
So in that sort of a situation, are you hoping to get hired to be in an orchestra or a local symphony, or like what's the dream?
That would be my professional dream, I would say. Yes, like being hired by an orchestra, which in today's day and age kind of means like to win a golf championship. It means the level is really, really, really high.
Yeah, of course.
These days, because there's lots of people that play an instrument, but not a lot of money that goes into arts in general. So it's very competitive right now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can imagine.
So from there, at that point, after 2 years, I was having a lovely time. Studying was amazing, although I realized pretty fast that was not really the place where I could build a career, just because of the way employment and the arts work in there. So I started looking around, and a super random person that I've met one day after a concert I played, this friend of mine, she's Mexican. She was having a Euro trip to find out in which university she would have liked to study in Europe. Casually, she happened to be in Gdańsk. She was the only person speaking English, and I was like, who are you? What are you doing over here? And we became friends. Then she ended up not studying in Europe anymore. We just kept talking to each other from time to time. And one day she was, hey, I'm studying in this little college in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. You should really apply to this thing because the trumpet teacher is a good guy. And then I wasn't planning on coming to the US. I just sent an email to this guy, and he was very nice. And after 150 emails and a lot of patience, I got this assistantship into this college, Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going. And so that was the only school I applied for, because I just really didn't know how it worked. Back in Europe, we think about America as a place where, when it comes to school, as a place where you just have to sell your kidneys in order to be able to do it. And that's true. That's not untrue. But what we don't know is that if you want to go to grad school, there are ways to do it for free or close to that.
Mm-hmm. And was this your first time visiting United States?
Yes.
Wow. And you were how old?
I arrived to the U.S. when I was 24.
Okay.
So I arrived there, and I had my master's in music performance in there. I really liked it. It was a good place to start my journey in this country because it's pretty small. It's just like a little college town in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. I had great teachers, and after 2 years, I kind of liked it. So I was like, well, if I want to be in this country, I need to keep studying because that's the way visa works.
Right.
So I looked around and I auditioned for the Kansas City University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC conservatory, and I got another graduate assistantship, and the rest is history, I guess. That was 4 years ago, and I did my doctoral degree here.
Unbelievable. So you are Dr. Alberto Racanati.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm almost a doctor. I need to turn in my dissertation, but yeah, you can call me doctor if you like. But
Well,
I'm still
that
getting
changes
used to
this
it.
whole interview. I mean, we've got to restart it now.
Okay, let's scratch
Okay,
everything.
let's restart it right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here with, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting here with Dr. Alberto Racanati. Welcome to the show, doctor.
Do you have a bad gas problem?
It's terrible gas, doctor. I can't stop buying equipment. I've got gear acquisition syndrome. How can you help me,
Nice.
doctor?
I don't know. I think you should buy them all.
I prescribe you to stay off Instagram and no longer scroll any posts anymore.
Right.
Okay, I'm sorry. So you're just about to finish your doctorate. That's amazing.
Yeah, it kind of really happened. Everything happened really randomly, because if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be, talking to you today from Kansas City, I wouldn't have believed you. So,
It's just amazing how it folds out, isn't it?
yeah. And I don't feel like the journey is over yet, so who knows?
Okay, I just want to take a quick break and listen to some of your music because it's so beautiful. This is one of the songs that made me want to have you on this show. So this is called My Calling. Okay, so wow, I love that track so much. I think I've told you that that song and your music in general has become part of my family's life. We played in the car. I love that song.
Wow. I feel like I have some responsibility right now.
You do. Tell us a little bit about that song. Is that new? Is that old? Where is that in your
So
discography?
most of the songs that I post on my Instagram. So my Instagram is kind of like my this is gonna sound bad. It's kind of like my music dump in a way, meaning that I mostly produce music at night after a long day of whatever work, music, rehearsing. So I kind of like just sit down and I let the music flow out of my brain. Literally, 95% of the music on my channel is just the product of me sitting down and putting some musical content out. Very few things I wrote in a separate setting, if that makes any sense. So
So these are improvisations mostly.
Usually I am not really I don't have a background in jazz music. I do improvise, as you just heard, but I mostly, the technique that I use most of the times is to find the melody. After I find the melody, I find like a chord progression that suits it well, try to keep it interesting. I do have notions about harmony and all that kind of stuff, so I try to use some of my degrees to try to spice it up, make it more interesting, and then I just embellish that melody. I go a little bit around the melody. I like to preserve a specific mood for each piece. So that piece that we just listened to, that is pretty much just the mood that I had that night, and me fidgeting around that idea, that musical expression. So that's how most of my music is created, really.
That's brilliant. That's really exciting. I compose similarly, where I don't come in with a ton of ideas, but it's just basically a stack of like improvised tracks that I kind of work with and massage. So, this kind of music creation is often hard to explain when people ask you, what is your inspiration for this? What is your thinking for this? And the answer is sort of like, I don't know. It just came out like that. Is that something you could speak to for us? Like, what is your, where do you feel like this comes from? Or is it just sheer raw expression and just comes out like that?
I'm starting to develop with time some sort of aesthetic statement, if you want to put it at that, which I'm not, I don't know if I'm ready to put it in simple and clean words, but pretty much I like to think about, this is not something that I do when I compose, but it's something that I like to think about in terms of just like aesthetic. I like to think about this notion of a past that has never existed. I feel like vaporwave and all these newer currents of music are really valuable in this time and age, because besides having a definite musical value, they also have some sort of aesthetic. They have this feeling of nostalgia that is pretty pervasive, that it's pretty much everywhere, although it's nostalgia that doesn't really appeal to anything that you really have been through, if that makes any sense. Like most vaporwave songs, you will go on YouTube and you see like a gif of somebody driving on a technological car down the highway or stuff like that,
looking like a scene from Miami Vice with greens and pinks, and
or like Blade Runner, right? Where
exactly,
we're in the future, but we're still listening to audio recordings on tape. So I really like this juxtaposition of old and new, and they kind of want to be reminiscent of something that in reality is just fiction, was never really existed. So I like to think about this kind of landscapes for when I'm composing music, for when I listen back to my stuff. That's what it makes me think of, if that makes any sense. As I said before, I'm not ready yet to put this into concise, organized words yet, but
I like how you're saying that you think about it in your life, but maybe not when you're sitting down and composing. That I can relate to, because when I sit down and actually make the music, I'm not thinking about those things. It's just not how it comes out. But maybe those things happen subconsciously when we're living, when we're kind of, when everything is sort of ruminating, is sort of growing inside of us. It's those times when we're not really aware or thinking about, ooh, I'm going to go home and write about that right now.
Right, exactly, yes.
Right, yeah.
So this project is very personal in a way, because I just let whatever happened to me during that specific day, or just my mood for the day, and I just sit down and I, as you just said, I don't think about, oh, well, I think I should put this synth rather than this other one because it sounds more 80s, or I just go by what appeals to me in that specific moment, which sometimes works, some other times doesn't work as well, right? It's a process, but it's definitely refining itself as I keep going.
So you mentioned vaporwave as a genre. Is that what you would call what you're doing?
Ideally, on an aesthetic level, I feel like I share a lot of just ideas with that movement, with that current. I don't know necessarily if I could label my music as vaporwave. I don't know. If that's applicable, I'll use it. But I'm still like, when I still think about what genre do I play, because whenever I would tell somebody that I'm into electronic music. That's how I mostly define it. People often ask me, so what kind of electronic music? And I don't always know what would be the best word to describe it, not because I want to be fancy or because necessarily I don't think I belong anywhere, because I certainly do fall into certain categories, but I just don't. It's a little bit lo-fi, it's maybe a little bit vaporwave, sometimes I like synthwave, sometimes I like retrowave, but I don't know, some other times I throw something else in there. So I would say yes and no. I just don't want to offend vaporwave fans being like, hey, how dare you saying this thing about our genre? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, people are real fanboys of all those genres right now.
Right, yeah.
It's interesting what you said about trying to sculpt a landscape of a past that wasn't your past.
Right.
That's the way you said it, I think. Something like that.
Not a past that has never happened.
That never happened. Mostly
because it's not always about memories of other people, meaning I'm thinking about the past, but somebody else's past. It's mostly about, I really like the whole sci-fi aesthetic. I really like movies like Blade Runner, Alien, that sort of stuff where they're set in some kind of future, but those are movies that were made 30, 40 years ago. So the idea of future they had back then was very romanticized. So I like the idea of this romanticized idea of future, which dwells in the past, meaning that if we think about future in 2019, we think about global warming and extinction and all those things. But people 40 years ago thinking about future, they thought about super great technology, robots, flying cars, and all that. So we're talking about the future, but from a past perspective. I don't know. We're getting into time travel here.
Well, I wonder what a show like Black Mirror will feel like in 50 years or 30 years, let's say. They're going to look back on it, if we're even still around in 30 years. They're going to look back on a show like Black Mirror, maybe like how we're looking back at, at Blade Runner now. Look how they thought that it was all about AI. Or look how it was all about the downfall of humanity because of social media. Like you've watched Black Mirror.
Yes, I'm a fan.
Yeah, me too. I've got to think it's going to be similar, where they're going to look back on those sort of shows and laugh at, or not laugh, but maybe be amused at how we thought that it was all going to be.
For sure. I think that we live in a very particular timeline in these days, because what has happened in the past 10 years which is social media and pretty much almost the whole population just going on the internet. This is just revolutionized in social relationships, business, just way of life in general. And this is still happening, and it's been happening for 10, 15 years at this point, and we don't really know what's happening. So we don't have the perspective, I think, in my humble opinion, we don't have the perspective yet to say what's happening to our music, to how the way music gets perceived, or the way people talk among themselves. Like, we are living it, but we still don't know. So in 50 years or 30 years, people will look back at these times and they will be like, oh yeah, that's where it all started, or like, I don't know, depending where they are, if they're there. So yeah, definitely.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's really that's a great observation. Okay, I'd love to listen to another song of yours, man. Can we play Aquarium?
Let's go with that. Yeah, I love that one.
Awesome. So that song has 0 trumpet in it.
Yes, correct.
All right, tell us about your process with this thing. What are you using? How did this one work? And why no trumpet?
Because, being a classical musician playing in orchestra, my 80%, if not even 90% of my time as a trumpet player, I am counting rests. I do not play. I only play at the climax of the musical piece I'm playing. I'm pretty much I bring the big guns, so to speak. So I'm totally used and comfortable not to be playing all the time.
I see. Okay.
So I am aware that most of the most successful stuff on my channel is the stuff where I'm playing trumpet with synthesizers. And that's something that I'm trying to expand and I'm trying to get more into. But I also like to just come out with interesting sounds, interesting patches out of the synths that I have. In this case, with Aquarium, that is a piece that is 100% model samples. There is no pedals, no external processing at all. It's just like straight out the model samples. And that was a piece that I made while relying heavily on the chance trigs. So the electron sequencer has this chance function where you can just decide that your trigs will play, I don't know, 50% of the time or 20% of the time.
Right, right.
So something pretty cool that you can do is and other people have done this around the internet, is that you can write down a really busy pattern, and then you can decide that you will play 20% of those notes. So pretty much it will be constantly shifting. It will never play the busy pattern in its entirety. It will be always constantly shifting. So I spent probably a couple hours developing that patch. There's a lot of LFOs that go into play, and I use a lot of wavetables with the model samples. And with that, pretty much, I have like a random value LFO that changes the length of the single cycle oscillator, so that it changes the pitch while I'm already using different pitches on the sequencer. It's super flexible. It allows you to do lots of things, and the model samples is one of the fastest machines and the most enjoyable machines that you can get to use out there, in my opinion.
So how did you get into using that one?
The model samples?
Yeah.
I just did a ton of research around that time. I didn't know whether I wanted to get a digitact or a model samples, and then I found I had a friend of mine working at a music store who could just give it to me for a pretty good price, and rather than buying a used digitact, I just decided to pull the plug and go with the model samples that I got maybe 2 months after it was released or something like that.
I see. What's the price difference? Isn't the digitact like $700?
I want to say that the model samples, I may be wrong with this, so might be worth to do some double checking, but the model samples might be around 440, 400, and the digitact is about 750 new.
Yeah, right. Okay. All of the Electron devices right now are just so popular.
They're getting popular. I mean,
yeah, they're doing great.
I'd really like to have more Electron machines. This is the model samples. It's probably the cheapest one they have, I want to say. It's still great. It works great for me. It is pretty deep, and it's very, very, very fast to use. I had a couple sessions where I just got my battery pack. I went to the park, and I just would lay down a track just using the model samples on my lap. Fast. It's pretty immediate to play, and it's definitely live performance friendly. So anything I learn every day from electronic music and just the music producing in general, it's something that I carry with me every time I try to write a new song, because now I know what works and what doesn't work. I know that this bass sound, for example, really doesn't sound too good on most speakers. I know that 90% of the music that we put out on Instagram and SoundCloud gets played out of a phone. just out of a cell phone speaker.
Unfortunately, that's true, yeah.
Unfortunately, right? So every time I try to put out something that has a drone, I love playing with drones. I love playing with like a deep bass, but those are pretty much non-existent on a little. They don't just come out at all
Yeah,
out of
right.
a little phone speaker. So that kind of stuff you need to know how to tweak, how to make it audible, if to use it at all, just because you need to be cognizant of all the different speakers that people will be using. This is something that it's like maybe a tiny fraction of what music production and mastering and mixing is like, but I know that I don't know much about it and I need to know more. So I'll be trying.
This has been amazing, man. I could talk to you all day.
Same for me. This is fun.
Why don't you tell us all the places on social media and the internet that we can find you?
Okay, so I am definitely the most active on Instagram. You can find me at instagram.com/Alber, ALBER_sounds, Alber Sounds. That's where I post most of my stuff. As I said before, that's kind of like my music dump, pretty dump.
It's a beautiful dump, man.
It's a discharge place of music, if you want to put it that way. And then I am also active on Facebook, and that's my handle is Alber_. If you write down Alber Sounds, I will still pop out on Facebook. I'm active on SoundCloud as Alber_sounds, and same on YouTube too. I post some full videos of my jams on YouTube. I'm planning on recording a CD, as I said before. It's something that it's taking shape in these very days. So I'm planning on having that a little bit more accessible. So streaming platforms, Spotify, and stuff like that.
So if you're listening and you want to follow Alberto Racanati, Dr. Alberto Racanati, the links are right under the episode here at Dotwave. So why don't you play us out with another track? What would you like to play?
I'd really like to play Addio. That's another track for synths and trumpet. That's a track that it has a very personal meaning for me. Addio in Italian means pretty much farewell. That's the word. It's like adios in Spanish, if you will. That's the word that you would say, the greeting that you would tell somebody when you know you will never see this person ever again.
Oh wow.
So I just thought about that word, and once again, a nostalgic feeling that really don't have never existed. They don't really resemble anything that has happened in reality.
Great. Well, I hope this will not be audio for us.
Oh, absolutely not.
I'd love to have you back after you make your record. And man, I just wish you all the best.
Thank you. You too. I hope that your podcast goes great and your music goes great. It's been really a pleasure.
Thanks, man. So do you think that Addio will be on your album, or is this a Dotwave exclusive?
That is one of these songs that might very possibly be on the album. Yes.
Great. Awesome. What a great interview with such a solid individual. Thank you once again to Alberto Racanati. If you want to find Alberto, all the links he mentioned will be listed on this episode's page. I have so many talented artists lined up for the show and a couple great surprises, so please stay tuned to Dotwave on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And thank you for being part of a new and quickly growing podcast. Thank you to this week's sponsor, Boutique Pedal NYC. If you're interested in pedals or your rack modules, head over to boutiquepedalnyc.us and you'll have a warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that you're supporting a small shop. Speaking of warm, fuzzy feelings, please consider supporting this show, even $1 a month. Head over to patreon.com/dotwave. This is John O. Wells, and I've been your host. Thank you so much for listening to Dotwave.